Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. I'm Snappy, and I'm joined today by my good friend, Dion. How's it going, Dion?
Amazing.
And we're here for the Occult Exploration Society. We're waiting on our dear friends, Dr. Ammon and Neal, to join us, but they'll be with us soon. And today we're getting together to talk about all things Medea. And this is part 5 of a Materia Prima series. So, Dion, what do you know about Medea? Why don't you set us up for today's kind of talk? And what have we been talking about lately?
The primal goddess, these goddess archetypes. Um, you know, and today we're not only going to talk about Medea. We're going to talk about, like I said, Medea archetype and symbolism, weapons in the hair, uh, some of the different iconography. Let's say. So yeah. Oh, we got somebody here with us.
Yeah, we got the good doctor. He's going to be popping in just a second here. But yeah, we're going to be talking about Medea. And I really want us to dig into this story because it's one of these most central stories to the Hellenic tradition, but it's become so kind of vilified and otherized that a lot of people are no longer familiar with it, or they're only familiar with aspects of it. So we're going to go into the sources today. I have a presentation, Dion has a presentation, and Ammon will also have a presentation for us. And it's going to be so much fun. I'm going to be talking about, in my story, or my version, I'm going to be going through all of the various stories related to Medea, because we basically see 5 different types of story, or 5 different narratives that occur in various iterations across the tradition. We have her origin story, which takes place in Colchis, right, where she has to escape the wrath of her parents, and she resists the human sacrifice. She meets up with Jason, and she gets, whipped by Aphroditic magic into helping him steal the fleece. So that's the first kind of major narrative that we see in the tradition. The next kind of narrative we see is Medea going back with Jason to take revenge upon Pelias and his household, right? So we have all the stories of them going back there, where she winds up boiling Pelias alive, tricking his daughters into doing this with the promise of immortality. Then the next kind of major narrative we have with Medea is her going to Corinth with Jason. And this is where Jason spurns her. This is the main subject of the tragedy Medea by Euripides and Seneca, right? This is where she enacts her revenge on Jason. And there's many iterations of her doing it, but she burns down, basically in most versions, the Corinthian palace, killing the king and his daughters. And then she escapes on the back of her dragon chariot. In some versions, she kills Jason. Some versions, Jason commits suicide, and some he dies alone, forgotten. But either way, it's not a good fate for Jason. And then we have the next story is the Athenian story, which is where she becomes the consort of King Aegeus and promises to get him a son. But she winds up running afoul of Theseus, attempts to poison him, and then she gets forced out of the kingdom, but she is pregnant with Aegeus's child. She then runs back to Colchis. There's variations, but somehow, and we're going to talk with Ammon, but somehow she winds up in northern Iran, of all places, where she becomes a queen, and Medes becomes the king, and they name the people after him. And then the final kind of narrative we get with her is in the afterlife. We don't really get a story of her death, but we get all of these stories about her. Sometimes she's equated with Helen, but her and Achilles get married in the Elysian fields. Apollonius of Rhodes talks about this. But these are sort of the main massive narratives we see. And this kind of grand narrative that it is described to you is pretty standardized throughout the entirety of the Greek tradition. We have all of the beats almost right from Hesiod. Hesiod, he doesn't tell us the story, but he references it. And the same thing with Homer. They talk about the Argo as the story everyone knows. And it seems to be really all of those 5 kind of epics are there. There's also reference to a lot of these stories being lost. Euripides apparently wrote a play about Medea and Aegeus in Athens that is now lost. And then there was apparently another one about her as the queen of the Medes that has been lost as well. But yeah, sorry for that rant, Ammon. Thank you for joining us. What are your thoughts?
There's a
you're
bit
muted.
of Sophocles too, and the root cutters and all that. There's
Right.
Root cutters. We know the Greek historians said that before there was Homer, there was works about Medea. So we know that she goes way back into the lore. I mean, right up to her time. I mean, she's late Bronze Age, so she was famous during her lifetime and infamous as well. And yeah, love sources are fantastic. I only brought one source with me today, and that is Dracontius. Right?
I'm really excited for that. I'm so pumped.
I love it. I'm going to listen very carefully though while you and Dion give your presentation so that I can keep up. Okay.
All right. Amazing. But yeah, Dracontius is going to be fun. For those of you unaware, Dracontius is like I think it's 450, 500 around there AD. He's North African bishop, but he's also deeply connected to this magical tradition, and he is engaged in the epic tradition. He writes a series of epics, the Carmina Romulia, and there's a bunch of different things that he also writes a version of the Oresteia. So very interesting guy. That'll be cool. But Dion, you start us off with your presentation on Medea.
Righty then. What I wanted to see is there other Medeas out there? Is it an archetype? Is it a title? Is it a name? Is there other forms of these symbolisms that can connect us to other cultures in the region? So hit the first pick.
Okay, here we go. Where do we go?
All right, here's from a stele that was found in Egypt. Meroe, if you're familiar, that's the other part of Egypt, Nubia. Meroitic inscriptions here, and it's in a Tocharian script. The first thing I want to mention about this statue, or the stele right here, is the writing is transplanted from Tocharia. And so Tocharia is a region up there by the middle of above India, Central Asia, and the Buddhist monks were trading there with Egypt right there, and they lent them their script for administrative stuff, doing trading and administrative script. And the script is a cognate, or let's say it's related to Sanskrit, a Buddhist script. And in this image, you'll see some interesting things. It's a queen on the left. Her name is Queen Medea. And it's spelled Meteye. And the way they pronounce it, the T's are D's. And what does it mean? It means to be correct, to be straight, to protect. And what's interesting is she's young. And the way they know she's young is because she has perky breasts. She has a top knot. The top knot is not symbolic of Egypt. That's symbolic of the Buddhist monks. She has a swastika on the robe there. Let's say her father or her husband is shorter than her because she was very tall. She was young and tall, this Queen Medea. And her husband has a whip as well, if you could see in the hand. They say it's her husband or her father. The script on there, like I said, is Tocharian, from a region in Central Asia. And we know that the Greeks were there trading as well, because we talked about Bactrian, the gymnosophists. These are the gymnosophists here too, as well. We've talked about the gymnosophists or gymnosophists that went to the Eleusinian rites, Eleusinian mysteries, and after that they burned themselves. After the mysteries, they were so enamored with it. And so why would I even go to Egypt to look for Queen Medea? because in some of the versions or some of the mythology, she comes from Africa. She comes from Egypt. She comes from Libya. And even Herodotus talks about the Colchians are Egyptian. That's what he said when he went there. He said he went there and, wow, these are Egyptians. And so, but if you go there in modern times, you won't find no Egyptian blood. So it's a funny myth. And there's a little more to it, because there's another myth that Egyptian contingent, a legion that during battle actually stayed and settled in Colchis on one of their battles they were going on, one of the wars. They actually stayed there. So I just thought that was interesting to show you this Queen Medea, because I found her in another way. A tall woman from Africa, that was a queen named Medea. So let's go to the next pic.
That's so wild. Amazing. Yeah, I just wanted to point out too, like the Tocharians are often interrelated with the Scythians, and they're in that same area. Remember, there was that massive discovery maybe about a year or half a year ago where they found that Scythian princess near Tibet, and she was dressed like a man with a fake beard. She was ridiculously tall. Well, that would have been in the same place where Tocharia would be, So it's very interesting.
And she might have a fake beard here too. That's Pharaonic. The pharaohs, the female pharaohs, would wear these fake beards, and the beards we showed in other videos were, they collected from the goats, because the goats would chew on that mastic gum, and they would collect it off the goat beards, the temple incense. But I think Ammon has something to say.
No, I just got a funny image of licking a goat's beard. You know what I mean? But that's, that's not out of the norm. I also want to point out with your example here that I just want to throw it out there. The Etruscan does the same thing with Medea's name, because they're dealing with it over there. And I'm wondering, is this a proof of a Pelasgian root? If only we had some kind of symbol, right? We could find out who it is that the Aryans worshipped, right? Oh, God, I love it. I'm going to shut up.
Well, so we're speaking of top knots, how she has a special hairdo. Well, here you go. We showed these in these previous videos, these goddesses from Bengal, modern day Bengal, and they're fertility goddesses and war goddesses at that. And in their hair, they have weapons, weaponized hair. You can see these little, all those little things on their hair right there are different weapons that are found in Vedanic literature. And these are also fertility goddesses, because you can see their bottom part is exposed. And so it's fertility and war, weapons in the hair. It's an archetype. Go to the next pic. Yeah, here's another one. You can clearly see the weapons in the hair right there. And so we're talking about weaponized hair. It's going to come up a little later when the good doctor explains it, the toxicon. So go to the next pic. There's another one, weapons in the hair right there. Go to the next pic. All right, so we're going to jump over to the Native American, to your region, actually, Iroquois. How do you say it? The real name?
Haudenosaunee.
Haudenosaunee, yeah. And this is Tadadaho, who became the first. All right. You want to tell the story of Tadadaho real quick?
Yeah. So okay. So basically, there's this story of there's the grand peacemaker, this guy named Hiawatha, and it's been a while, but he has a princess with him. But together they come together and they create the first democracy by their uniting together to bring all of the different peoples. But there's one tribe that refuses to unite, and they practice this ancient shamanic magic where they wear the snakes in their hair and they have stone skin, and they do these sacrificial rites, and there's all these accusations made. So what ends up happening is that Hiawatha, though, he's the great peacemaker. He convinces Tadaho to give up the dark magic rites, and he combs the snakes out of his hair. And they say this is like removing confusion from him. But where it gets wild is that Tadaho then becomes the first leader of their democracy, the first elected leader, and becomes like the ideal, leader of their system. So that's how they were able to bring everyone in and to incorporate. And it was this idea of getting rid of these older rites. And it has to do with this red hair, the stone skin, and the snake magic.
And the snake magic was used for their arrow poison. The way the Iroquois made the arrow poison was they take a deer liver, stuff it with the rattlesnake head, and bury it until it fermented, and then you would dip your arrow in that. With Hiawatha meaning he who combs the snakes out of the hair. The actual guy's name, the peacemaker, means he who gets the snakes out your head. It's an archetype. These are archetypes we're dealing with here. So let's go to the next picture. All right. Medusoi, the Gorgon. This is part of Medea.
Right? I also want to point out this image, right, is a Gorgon here, but it's also the same thing we see for Artemis. In the earliest images for Artemis, we have these like from the 3rd century BCE, where she's got the wings, and except she's got an arrow, just no snakes in the hair. That's the only difference.
I just want to point out the calipigiosity here. Would everybody please focus on that buttocks? As you know from last week when we went into the sources, this is the thing of beauty, right? Right? So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Fantastic. Look at what great shape she's in. Look at these. Oh, God, these Scythian women. Look at them. This is what we're supposed to be doing, people. And those, oh, God, I'm gonna build on top of this later when it comes to the snakes and the hair. I love it. I just happen to get a picture of Medea talking about the very same thing and doing the very same thing. So I'll shut up. But remember that Medea and Medusa, that's the same root, right? That is 2 different actions that are the same thing, right? We just have one A over here and B over here, but they're the same thing, right? Fantastic. Love it.
And not only the same thing, they both start off beautiful and then are villainized. They're both beautiful women. And the story of the Gorgon Medusa, she's just, her beauty is acclaimed. Everyone knows about her beauty, so Poseidon rapes her at Athena's temple. Well, do you think Athena would take a pity on her? Athena says, no. Athena curses her for this action, even though she didn't curse Poseidon. And so she made her ugly, skin like stone. What's happening here? And these Gorgons. And so there's a little more to the story here. Let's build on this. Go to the next pic.
There's always that weird divine intervention, right? One of the themes that I'll get into is, what is Hera's beef with Medea? And why does she like Jason so much? That's a weird one,
So she turns the Gorgon into a Medusoi, into the snakes and the hair. So, well, we could use this to our benefit, because if we cut that head off, the blood, what does that become? The flying horse? As well as you could put her head on a shield and becomes the Aegis shield, which is a form of protection that you'll see all over the iconography. Hey, look at that beautiful scenery there. Is that the beach behind you?
It's full. If you go far enough, you can end up at the beach. Yeah, that's not the beach right there, though. No, I'm in Florida, though.
This, Neal.
Hey, can you hear me good?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It.
Great.
Oh, so this is working then. I got the new Bluetooth headphones now. They're nice and cordless. I can come outside and do this.
Amazing. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations on the move.
Thank you.
Amazing.
By the way, speaking of Medea, in 9 days, I pick up a new dog that I named Medea, French Bulldog.
Oh, beautiful.
So Medea will be running around out here very soon.
Good. Well, right now we're talking about Medusa and cutting off her head and putting it on a shield, and how that could work to someone's benefit as a magic symbol, as a form of protection. But let's hit the next pic, because you can take a head and cut it off and put it on a plate, on a charger plate. And here's John the Baptist with Mary Salome. This head on a plate, head on a shield. There's a motive here as well. This is all archetypes that we're talking about. not necessarily individual stories. And in this version, she wants to seduce him. He doesn't want her. So she does her dance, cuts his head off, puts it on a charger plate. And what happens is he starts flying around the city prophesizing. It won't shut up. In one version of the story, he won't shut up. The head of John the Baptist just flying around the city. It's that head on a shield. It has value. We also talked about Bromwyn back in the day, that version, which is another head on a shield. But go to the next pick. And so this Medusoi, the Gorgon Medusa, why does she have
a Roman
wings?
one? Is that a Roman one?
Yeah, exactly. Why does she have wings? So in a lot of these images, you'll see that she has wings. Wings on her back and wings on her head. Go to the next image. Wings on the head. Next image, please. And this is the famous one right here, the Roman one that you could go see one of these museums, where you see these nice wings and the snakes are coiled underneath her chin. And so I wondered, why does she have the wings? That's that Orythian element, that Gorgon element, were the wings, that Artemis element. So go to the next pick. Boom. So there, the Aegis. The Aegis is not necessarily a shield.
You know where I saw a lot of these everywhere, all over the place, was in Israel.
Woo!
Medusa heads all over Israel. You'd think that's the last place you'd find it, but no, they're all over the place.
Symbol of protection. And so here, it's not on a shield. Here it is on a goat skin, where it could be on a goat skin shield, but here it's on a goat skin fabric itself. They're attaching the head onto the fabric that could be worn on the body. And at that, it's not necessarily a cut off head. It's a head of a rattlesnake, of a snake. You cut off the head of the snake, attach it to the goat skin, and wear that. These are, let's say, formulae. Hit the next picture.
Also want to point out, notice that it is worn as a girdle in the Amazonian style with the
Chiton.
one breast exposed.
Yeah, chiton. Yeah, exactly.
For young virgins as well, right?
And so here we have Medusa's head, not on a shield, but on a patera. This is a bowl. This is a libation bowl, like a kylax, a patera. And so imagine that would be filled with wine. And if we know that the head, it's the head of a snake, imagine that you cut the head of a snake and put it into a bowl of wine and drink that. Is that a formula? It sure would look like it. Go to the next pick. So boom. Now we're going to get into Medea. I got 4 pictures left, and then we'll have you guys take it away. Here, she's with Jason, and she has a bowl or a cup. Her magic involves a cup. That's part of the iconography of it. Hit the next pick. Boom. And before that, in that cup, she was preparing an ointment to Christ Jason Iasos to give him the magic power, dealing with the snake stuff. Well, here she's doing it to the snake too. In some versions, she puts it in the snake's eyes. She Christs the snake, or she gets the snake high to put it to sleep. These are formulas, and he has the fleece over there as he's stealing the fleece. In some versions, the fleece in Colchis and Scythian mythologies in Georgia, that's how they collected gold in the river. They put these fleeces in the river and get the gold off of it.
I got a quick question. This is it's on topic. It's not off topic, but Ammon might be able to answer this. Is the difference between Yasion and Yasios just male or neutered?
No, it's just a variation of an ending. It has nothing to do with the roots. No. Is it a difference? Just like a different case ending, right? Some of those names.
I've seen Yasios with the S at the end.
Some of those, hang on, Neal. Some of those names will end in an omega nu, right? And some of them are omega sigma. It just depends. So no, don't try to put any gender on it. If they wanted you to know that, they would have mailed you that form in the mail. Love it.
And not to cut off Dion, but I just wanted to make sure, because he is Christed. He is anointed by Medea.
Right.
And he has that name. That name has, as Carl Ruck points out, he is that that Jason.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
Right.
Is it not a Christ?
Right.
I thought I've seen some of you guys' videos on that.
Notice that Dion is saying very specifically Christing. which the text is there. The Greek is there. It's exactly how it expresses it, right? So for everybody who's surprised that Christing is a medicated cult process that causes your eyes to be opened, right? What do they do? What's the first thing Dion told you it does? It puts him to sleep. You know, these people go into these incubations for 3 days, right? And then they get raised from the dead. You know, that dragon, he never died, right? She put him to sleep. She Christed him, right? And that death.
Yeah, and you know what she Christ?
Yeah.
You know what she Christ? Medea Christ Jason with the ichor of Prometheus, the blood of Prometheus while he was chained with nails in his wrist, specifically in his wrist, just like Jesus, right?
And does the ichor come out golden?
I don't know. She mixes it with some shit.
I get into
Apollodorus tells us the whole entire.
I have the sources. We'll get into it later. Yeah, we'll get into it later. There's a couple different versions of it, but it basically, the ichor pools onto a plant that they call the herb of Prometheus. And then she collects the herb, and this is what they use. And then there's a lot of speculation. Like, a lot of scholars for a long time believed it was the sylphanum, but it doesn't make sense. It's some kind of herb that supposedly grows only in the Caucasus, but it's an ingredient to the Theriac. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. We got a couple more pictures.
And it gives him eternal life, just so you know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Euripides tells us at the very end, right, of Medea, that all the people that she has given immortality to, it's like Jason, Aeson, there's a few of them, but yeah, you get to come back again and again and again. Continue, Dion. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Hit the next pic, please. So here, from a famous painting, you see Medea. She's picking something for her basket, and it's a mushroom. It's a red mushroom at that.
I want to say something about this real quick, because a lot of people will, and I guess you could say this is kind of a smart response to this. They'll point out, hey, this is medieval. This ain't ancient. Medieval or whatever. Maybe this is 17th century. I don't even know. Let's just whatever. Let's say this is 16th century.
It could even be 1800s.
It doesn't. Yeah, my point is the artist of the time period between the 13th, I want to say 13th century, all the way up until the modern era. The artists were the most educated class. They were the ones reading the classics. When they're painting something, they got it from a source most of the time. And you could see that once you start reading. This is the craziest thing that I've experienced since I started reading primary sources. I start reading primary sources, and I start seeing these Renaissance and Enlightenment paintings in the sources as if it's backwards. And then I realize, holy shit, these Renaissance painters are reading these sources and they're putting them on. They're painting them. So they
had to hide it. They had to hide it from the church. So that's the Orphic box undercover there.
That's why they get called crypto-pagans. That's the whole story about Plethon. Plethon starts the academy at Florence with Medici, and the rest is history.
Right.
And they're all reading classics.
Yeah. They're all reading the classics, but it's so ingrained. We have levels of this, right? You can expand from Plethon. We get all kinds of different figures that do this, such as Boccaccio. You get the Secretum. What's that guy's name? Petrarch. We have also people like Rabelais, and then later with Byron and Shelley. Like it doesn't stop. The tradition continues, and you can even find people today who are talking about this stuff, or at least who are tangentially related. They may not see it as clearly as Ammon did with the Greek, but like you'll see Crowley. Crowley's trying to do the rites. Go read Liber Lapis Lazuli. Make sure that you have the stomach for it, though.
Well, hit the next pic. All right. So here's another one of these paintings. Yeah, we're looking at old paintings and going, well, it's encoding the text. Here, Medea is pondering, do I kill my children? And notice her children are playing a game. That's what makes it even more intriguing at that. She's pondering, do I kill them as they're playing a game? And her colors that she's wearing today are purple and crocus.
Saffron.
Yep.
By the way, this is definitely ancient Roman painting too.
Yeah. So let's hit the next pic. Boom. Here she is presenting the child, Helios. Grandpa Helios, I think that's her granddaddy.
This one you can tell is like 500 BC, something like that. You can tell by the way. Yeah.
And she has Helios has the torches like Hekate. Because I didn't bring that up yet, that Medea is a priestess of Hekate. Daughter right there. She's presenting the child, getting the child ready. Grandpa's okay with it. The gods were okay with the sacrifice. Just saying.
That's how it was.
They didn't stop her. There was nothing stopped her from doing it. So now
you see a lot of those priestesses with that hat and the very specific dress code with like the stars. The way it was described by one of the authors was describing that the reason why there's so many dots on it is they're wearing the heavens on themselves.
Like the Milky Way, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I just wanted to also point out, though, that we do have conflicting traditions. When I was looking into this, right, the earliest sources do not mention the murder of her children, and they focus instead on the greatest sin being the desecration of her brother, Absyrtus. This seems to be mostly what she's known for. You even have her with epithets that condemn her for this, not her kids. It's not until Euripides is Medea that becomes a standardized tradition. And it's well documented that there's this whole belief that it's about he was paid by Corinthians to say that Corinth didn't. So the story is that after she burns down the palace and kills Glauce and Creon, the people of Corinth in anger and retribution rip the kids apart. That's apparently the apocryphal version, but we don't have a direct textual source of this. It's just one of these Otto Kern type fragment things, where everyone's talking about it.
We do have a report from antiquity that there was an oracle. Corinth had got a plague shortly thereafter, and they sent an oracle to find out what the hell, what are we doing that's wrong? And they said it was the time that you lied about Medea when you killed her children and then blamed her, right? And so they said what you have to do is you have to recognize that before the plague will go away. So they did, and they supposedly built a monument to them on at the well where they had thrown their bodies. The mob just killed them, man. Mob just killed them. Why? Because Medea put a substance on a crown and on a gown that burst into flames when it got close to a flame, right? And that's what started the fire. It sounds like she's an arsonist. No. Their bodies were the source of the fire of the palace in Corinth. So the people were quite pissed because they knew only Medea had that tech. That was her tech. They're still calling it Medea's fire many years later. They're still calling it.
And there's Medea's water too. She has a water tradition. So real quick, here's another Apollodorus' Bible. It's called the Bibliotheca. It's called the Bible. We call it the library now, just to separate it from. For some reason, the Bible gets translated as Bible, and this gets translated as library. You know what I mean? Just because, but they're both the same word, Bibliotheca. Anyways, that's a whole different account in there. But Diodorus also has his own account as well. Ammon did a video. Yeah, Ammon did a whole video exploring that account. That was a cool account. But then you have these little fragments scattered abroad, and one of the fragments is that Diogenes, who's a cynic, Diogenes the dog, didn't write anything down except for one play. He wrote a play in Athens called Medea. And when they asked him about Medea, and he said, she's not a witch like you guys say she is. She was an amazing healer who used magic to heal people's bodies and make them immortal. What a weird thing for a cynic to say. because cynics are known for like talking shit about like religious rights and sort of being critics of things. But when he talks about Medea, he was serious about it.
This is a weird thing with Medea, right? Because we even like read Seneca's Medea. There's twice the drugs, twice the anger. Yet at the end of the story, he goes on this whole big rant about how she's justified and great. And you're like, how is this written by Seneca? It almost goes against Stoicism, that play. But yet he's like, no, Medea is great. This is how it is. But I want to point out, though, what's interesting with Medea is we see this parallel with Hekate. And I really want to get into this because in the earliest traditions, Hekate is just this savior goddess. She is the light bringer. She carries the torches. She guides Persephone and Demeter, right? She helps them to and from the underworld. And she almost has very little negative associations. It's the same thing with Medea. In the earliest sources, she's fighting against her mother and her father. She's locked under house arrest. She breaks free, and she's going to go and save Jason. And what does Jason do? What's wild is Jason casts a spell on her, right? He takes advantage of her. She's already there to save him and is looking to change the ways of her people. She wants to share this magic. It's totally messed up, you know? What do you guys think about this kind of vilification that happens?
Did you notice how much sex magic is involved? It's one sex drug after another from the very beginning. And Dracontius wants you to understand that is the source of this sorceress's power. I love that. Who's next on the presentation?
I'll go quick so that then we can get to your Dracontius, Ammon, so that everyone kind of has a general understanding of Medea. So this is the famous crater of Medea that Ammon uses all the time. Her on her chariot bound by dragons. But in the play, she's also got 2 virgins with her as well. And she had 12 other virgins help her ascend that they don't show you here. But anyway, so I wanted to point out some of the earliest stuff, and I wanted to talk to Ammon about this. So there's all of this weirdness around Medea and Iphigenia, and equating Medea, Iphigenia as the same person and as Hekate. And I want to know your thoughts on this. It seems to be this immortality magic is actually about being reborn in your children and going through these cycles. And we have Medea as this one who is connected to Poseidon, and then we have her as Hekate, the wife of Aeetes, and then we have her as Medea. What do you think about this? Some scholars are speculating this, but again, it's speculation.
Yeah. The only input, the only value that I can give to that is what I found when I was looking through the linear B, the Mycenae and the linear B, because that's used there. And the iffy there is really a prefix that is an intensifier. So remember, they're still using the titles, right? So this is a title, Iffy Medea. We think, oh, it's a name, right? Well, yeah, it is, but it's a title. Who is she? She is the one who is that super strengthened Medea, that one who brings that healing. It's the same reason that you're getting a play about Medea as the healer, right?
You just blew my mind, because Iphigenia is the daughter who gets sacrificed,
right,
by Agamemnon.
Right.
Iphigenia,
right,
like the genetic one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's the same language, right? Love it. Sorry, go on.
Well, you also see what's interesting is that Genea thing is an epithet of Medea. She's known as the monogenes. You see this all the time. She who is born alone, the single daughter, right?
And that's the only begotten daughter, sacrificed by the father, right? Just like Abraham sacrifices his only begotten son on a mountain, about to do the deed because the god told him to, and then at the last second, Artemis comes and snatch. It says an angel of Artemis. It says a messenger of Artemis, an angelou of Artemis. An angelou comes and snatches up Iphigenia, takes her away, makes her a priestess of Artemis. and then
Yeah.
in her stead is a deer. It's like, and this is 8th century BC story, Homeric era we're talking about.
We did a whole talk on this, Dion and I, when we did our deep dive into Artemis last week, and we even found sources from the Baronia and that are related to this tradition of the bears, where what you actually see is this one version where the goddess Artemis is casting a plague on the town, and the people are, because someone had killed a bear. So in order to prevent this one guy says that he will sacrifice his own daughter. But when the time comes to sacrifice his daughter, he dresses up a goat and he puts the goat on display. This comes from the Suda. And what happens is he kills the goat and the plague subsides. So they had dressed the daughter up as a bear. So she comes out now as the bear, and then after a while they take the bear costume off and everything is fine, and he gets to become the priest for all time. He gets to be the ruler. Doesn't this sound exactly like the story of freaking Abraham that you were just pointing out?
Yeah. And real quick, but right before you continue, last thing I want to say is you asked, isn't it something that they just justify Medea, even though they're all very they all know about her sorcery and all this stuff. Well, you could say the same thing about the Hebrews with Solomon. You know, Solomon is sort of a Medea character on their end, where he's doing all this sorcery. He's building temples to Aphrodite, having all these wives. He's killing people left and right. And they're like, but he's Solomon, so who cares? He's still a prophet.
One thing, can I add one thing to that? Can I add one parry to that? One parry I'd like to add is Solomon is a fictional character made up in the 3rd century BC, for whom there is not prior evidence. Medea is a person for whom there is evidence spread all over the Mediterranean and the Near East. So take that, Inky Do. Stick that up your backside, Inky Do.
Well, the Etruscans too. Also, to talk about this a bit more, when we were talking about all of those different types, there's all these different Median stories. The kind of the one I want to focus on in relation to Solomon is her equation with Semiramis. Lucian says in his De Syria, which Neal is one of the most important sources for any kind of Syriac religion, and he equates her with Medea in the text.
Isn't that something?
What is that? What is going on there? Right.
And she's the one represented by the dove, the symbol of peace in the Catholic Church. Isn't that something? There's so much. The D-Day Syria is a must read for anyone watching this. Go and make that your next read. I'm telling you.
So this is where, there isn't much on this. There seems to be there's 2 events, or at least 3 of the events in Medea's stories we have very little sources on, and there's a lot of speculation. And that is her time in Athens with Aegeus, her time in becoming this person with the Medes and giving birth to Metis. There's only all these references to it. And then her somehow winding up with Achilles. And she's somehow connected to Helen. Their stories very parallel each other.
Can I say how she's connected to Helen? And it's very important too.
Yes, let's hear.
So in Herodotus, Book 1, Chapter 1, he opens up. He says, all of Hellas is from the backdrop of the Trojan War. Basically says everything I'm about to say is because of this Trojan War. That's how Hellas became about. And he says, but how the Trojan War started is not what we're told. He basically says, we all know the story that Helen is captured. But what happened was Helen was captured in retaliation for Medea being captured, and Medea was captured for retaliation of Io being captured. Now check this out. Io is this Egyptian Helen of Troy version girl, right? Medea is this Caucasus Helen of Troy, right? And then Helen of Troy is the Helen of Troy of Hellas. But they're all 3 of them are sort of like this triangle of these beautiful princesses who get captured in their own traditions. Homer, I don't know if Herodotus is trying to unify them or if he's if he knows about this tradition of all three of them being captured, right? What it's hard to tell, but Io, if you think about it, Io is called Isis in Egypt, and she's the one stung by the gadfly in Apollodorus.
Yep.
So
This seems to be what
something's going on with that shit, dude.
This seems to be what they're alluding to, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it because it did seem kind of a stretch. But there's all this tradition that talks about Hekate as being those three, and then Artemis being Hekate herself and Selene. So it's like these descents into matter of this
triads. It's always
triads, the trimorphos. This is why they call all of these people are. Medea's a trimorphos, Hecate's a trimorphos, Artemis a trimorphos, right?
And you had Herodotus telling this weird story right in the beginning of his histories. He opens up with this. It's almost like he's saying, you got to know this story before I tell you anything else.
Also this weird stuff, like going back to that Egypt stuff. We have, it's only referenced like in again, it's one of these fragments that's talked about, but Plato talks about it. So does, I believe, Pausanias, but it's Stesichorus. I believe that's how you say his name. But he wrote a palinode about Helen, and he says that Helen never actually got abducted and went to Troy to be with Paris. Instead, he says that Hecate occluded her and brought her to Egypt to study the mysteries. So there's some weird stuff going on with these three and all of this. What do you think?
John Tzitzis says Medea was projecting her image through Helen on the walls of Troy into the dreams of Achilles. Remember, Medea.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. Medea ends up the bride of Achilles in the underworld. Why? She's already there. She is Deidamia, right? The one that Achilles combined with. Why do you think he did so? Because she was burning off his mortality, right? It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. Can you go back, Snappy, to the Odyssey? I just want to add. Hang on. I just want to add before I forget. Look what happens to the children. And people, please notice this is gods and humans. This is gods and humans pairing and intercourse. And what kind of offspring are they producing? Right? Dig down into the anthropology. They're short-lived, right? And godlike. And one of them, they bred him to be the tallest. Who bred him? Gaia. All of this magic, don't forget, goes back to the oracle of Gaia. All of it does. These women are doing things that are amazing.
Hesiod tells us this, does he not? He says that Gaia is the one who's responsible for all of it. She has Uranus killed. She has Kronos killed. And it will be her who will have Zeus killed, right?
You ready for this? So Ammon just gave us a source from John Tzitzis. I think that's how you say his last name. Tzitzis that connects Medea to Helen in an undeniable way. That these traditions were connected. Now think about this. The Helens are named after Helen. Hellas is named after Helen, right? No.
It's a different Helen. It's a different Helen with two lambdas, and he's a son of Hoo-Ha, Doo-Ha, Deucalion, and ultimately it goes back. So no, those are not the same.
All right, put that aside then. But the Medeas, though, the Medes are named after Medea, according to like multiple sources that they name this after Medea. But check this out. Apollodorus goes into Io. He says that Hera is the one that sends the gadfly to go sting Io, the cow. So Io is the cow stung by the gadfly. And then she says when the cow came to the Ionian Gulf, they named it after her. The Ionians are named after Io. He says that the Bosporus, the Black Sea, or the Bosporus, is now was called the Thracian Strait, but now it's called the Cow's Crossing, Bosporus, after her. So, all right, that's crazy too. But she gives birth to Epaphos. So, Okay, you have this, as we mentioned, Herodotus is linking Helen with Medea and Io. In the same sense, they all have these places named after themselves like that. How weird is that?
It's amazing. It's incredible. It shows you how connected this is all, right? There's clearly an integrated metaphor that we are picking up on that's been broken over time, but that these scholars, these ancient scholars, were very intimately aware of, you know?
Yeah, and it shouldn't be lost. The point shouldn't be lost that Neal is making, that Io is plagued by that gadfly that we call oestrus. And if you know what the gadfly is and what the Christing does, you know what they call in antiquity oestromania. That's prophecy. Prophecy. This is the same figure. Neal's not just whistling Dixie. Yeah, no, it's gorgeous.
That's amazing.
And the
So I
fact
wanted
that
to
Hera,
do-
the fact that Hera is the one that sends the Gad, just as she sends the Titans to tear up Bacchus. Something's going on with that.
Well, there's also we'll see in a second here, but Hera takes pity on Jason and interferes and is the one who convinces Aphrodite to give Jason the whip and to teach him the song of the Yunksbird, the Jinxbird, in order to bend the will of Medea and make her turn against her parents. It's like I'll find it. Where is it? It's freaking. I think it is. I think it's Dioscordy here, or was it Hyginus? Anyway, it doesn't matter, but we'll get to it. It's pretty wild. But I wanted to show you this one because this comes to us from Hesiod the Theogony. And this is the earliest textual reference that we have of Medea. But it shows you just how complete her story is in the very earliest of the Greek literary period. Okay? Jason, the son of Aeson, by the will of the gods, led away Aeetes, Medea, the daughter of Aeetes, the heaven-nurtured king. When he had finished the many grievous labors which the great king, overbearing Pelias, that outrageous and presumptuous doer of violence, put upon him. But when the son of Aeson had finished, he came to Iolcus after long toil, bringing the coy-eyed girl with him on his swift ship, and made her his buxom wife. And she was subject to Aeson, shepherd of the people, and bare a son, Medeus, whom Chiron, the son of Philae, brought up in the mountains. So this is important because that's where we get Medus is the king of the Medes, and he gets taught by Chiron in the mountains of Iran. So even from this early Hesiodic period, we have that full story arc of her going from Colchis to Iran.
Don't forget, in that same part of the world, when Alexander was over there in those Caucasus region mountains over in Persia, modern day Iran, they found ivy on the side of the mountains, and they were taking a break from their wars, and all the Alexander soldiers started donning the ivy as little wreaths, and they all went into a Bacchic frenzy. Arian tells us. What a crazy story that is! I love it. So don't forget, the East is out there. We gotta represent the East once in a while. Those Bactrians were Greek all the way till 200 CE.
Oh yeah.
Don't forget about the East. All right.
Well, this is the thing. The Greeks and the Indians agreed that Dionysus and Shiva both came from Mount Kailash. Just lots of weirdness like this. You get these reports where they identify, there were a lot more interconnection than people like to think, But I wanted to get into some of the Diodorus Siculus because I feel like this gives us the most complete version of the story in a fairly concise way. So this is talking about the beginning of it. It's setting us up with Circe and what happens with Circe. So it says, since it is the task of history to inquire the reasons for this slaying of strangers, we must discuss these reasons briefly, especially since the digression on the subject will be appropriate in connection with the deeds of the Argonauts. We are told that it is Helios had two sons, Aeetes and Perses. Aeetes being king of Colchis, and the other king of the Tauric Chersonese. This is important, right? That's the Toroboros. That's where Iphigenia winds up. That's where the Artemis cult is. This is where the Scythians are, right? And Perses had a daughter, Hekate, who surpassed her father in boldness and lawlessness. She was also fond of hunting, and when she had no luck, she would turn her arrows upon human beings instead of beasts. Being likewise ingenious in the mixing of deadly poisons, she discovered the drug called aconite and tried out the strength of each poison by mixing it in the food given to the strangers. And since she possessed great experience in such matters, she first of all poisoned her father and so succeeded the throne, and then founding a temple of Artemis, commanding that strangers who landed there should be sacrificed to the goddess, she became known far and wide for her cruelty. Right? So I wanted to put this out in all of this
wandering strangers just showing up on the shore.
Right? But here's the crazy thing that we got to understand. This, in the Greek mind of this time, is the satanic other. This is the scariest thing imaginable, and also the greatest breaking of taboo, right? Besides arity, the next greatest thing that you can do as a person is to give hospitality, right? To spurn the stranger is a sin. So what these people are doing is like the most insane sin imaginable. Right? This is why the Greeks keep talking about this, because to them, cutting up a stranger and sticking them on a pike in the name of your goddess, that is beyond offensive, right, Ammon?
Oh God, this is the most sexy. I want more and more and more of this, because look, this is the Chersonese, baby. This is the place where the priestess of Diana sacrifices those strangers. If you don't have it in you to find out, you're not going to understand where the power is and how to use it. This is fantastic. They're transforming people with these drugs, right? They're doing real-time research. Think about this. Just for a minute. How sexy smart is this? They're turning their arrows, which we all know they're great at that, right? What are they turning them into? They're turning them into that link to test in the humans what is going on. If these are not the sexiest of the sexy Amazonian women, I don't know what is. I'm sorry, but that's just my opinion, right? Okay, sorry. I'll stop. I'll take my little fantasies. Go over here.
Well, it's wild, Evan, that you talk like that, because in this story, what's so interesting is that on one hand, all of this power Medea is really interesting because she does have all that magic and power, but she even tells us in many of the versions, she doesn't use it. She's trying to fight against the magic of her mother. She refuses to commit the sacrifices. She rebels and is imprisoned and breaks free. But even more so, she only commits violence when, after freaking Jason uses magic against her and then forces her to, right? Like, this is the thing, right?
Well,
Jason asks her to take revenge, right?
Apollodorus says that Jason made an oath and broke that oath, and that's why she had the green light to do this. Yeah, because Jason broke the oath.
Yeah, screw Jason. Come on,
so
man.
I wanted to point this out. Sometimes,
wait a minute, Snappy. There's one element that we need to recognize. We don't have all the picture because she's operating at the level of a queen, and there is a civil war going on that is happening because of what she is doing. She's part of tribes where you have to kill 3 men before you can be considered capable of breeding. Right? So these sons that don't make it are becoming divine through the process of the initiations, chemical initiations that they're putting them through. Right? Part of the cult, part of the mystery. And remember I told you sometimes they're lethal. Look what happens. Sometimes the generation is shorter, right? But we're still passing on that immortality through that one figure. I love it. I love it. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop.
So, Diodorus Siculus goes on in his telling. He tells us about how Circe was married off to the Scythian king, and then she murders him, and then is outcasted with her 12 virgins, and they sail around the ocean until they find a magic island called Aea. Others say that it's this peninsula off the coast of Italy called the Circeum, but it's highly debated. Anyway, what ends up happening, though, is in some of the versions of the story, when the Argonaut goes on its journey, Jason first winds up at the island at where Circe is. He winds up at Circe's kingdom, and sometimes Circe is called this Chalciope. And I wanted to point out that both Circe and Juno and Aphrodite, all of these powers are conspiring against Medea and in favor of Jason, right? Because he goes there because Circe tells him to seek out Medea and to seek out her magic and that song of immortality that is written on the skin. Because this also gets so wild is that we find out, right, that like Aeetes' power and his control over his country is all about this sacrifice of the foreigners, and this is how he's able to maintain his control, so there's, like Ammon was pointing out, there's a massive civil war and power change that's going on here, and we have this very common Greek theme where someone is maintaining their power through magical means, and then now someone else from the outside is going to break it, right? But
people ask, okay, if the oracles were right and Medea didn't kill her own children, it would make a lot more sense. And that stuff became sensationalized much later. That would make sense. But please don't forget, she is still from this Dianic hunting culture, this horseback, drug-using, pharmacologically advanced culture. And she burns 2 people alive, of which there are graphic descriptions. And then, of course, another civil war. And then what does she do? She goes to another kingdom. And what does she do there? She attempts. There's nobody that says it was just blamed on her. She attempted, just like Circe, she attempted to assassinate somebody who was in the way of the power, namely the dude. And what dude was that? It was Theseus. And what did she give him? She gave him, we even know she gave him bull's blood. There are remedies for bull's blood in the Roman military doctors. Yeah, Scribonius Largus is the one that's got it. And so, yeah, aconite. Remember what they're discovering? Aconite. These are serious friggin' poisons, right? So don't think that when you look at Medea, who was this great queen, who ruled an empire of the mind from Babylonia to Spain, don't think that she was not ever involved in activity from which she had to be purged. And that comes back to where you are, Snappy, because that's why Jason and Medea are going to see Circe. They have to be purged. Why do they have to be purged? They have blood pollution. She just killed her brother. Do you know why? Same reason Cleopatra would. And you know what? They both had the situation with the venoms, right? Oh, God. You mean there's a group of people who've been doing that throughout time? Yeah,
I think
there
James
is.
Frazier,
Isn't it gorgeous? Yeah.
I don't know what sources he's talking about. But he always has sources. But James Frazier is mentioning that the Diana sacrifices, oftentimes they would dress the sacrifice up like a purple robe king, put a crown on his head before they sacrificed him.
Not surprised.
What
Not
does
surprised.
that remind you of? Though? What does that remind you of?
Jesus
Vax
Christ.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, they say that, remember, right? Even Hercules had to be drugged, raped, stuck on a pyre, and burned alive to become God, right? To achieve apotheosis. Like even the great Heracles had to go through all that. So,
Well, he went through a few different phases amongst putting on the dress.
right, you have to enter that battleground of Ares. We see that here too. But before we get off track, I wanted to talk to you guys about this because this is something that came up in our Hekate video with the Strophalon, and again the Wryneck, the Jinx bird, and all of this power of Aphrodite, and that screech, the Iwa. Something about all of this is this magic of persuasion that can lash the mind, and this is the power that Hermes and Hecate have, the magic that they can give you, and that's in that caduceus, which is that originally the whip of Apollo. So what does it say? It says, and the queen of sharpest arrows brought the dappled Wryneck from Olympus, bound to the four spokes of the indissoluble wheel. So that is the Strophalon. The bird is strapped to the spinning lapis lazuli wheel that screams when it's spun, like the dog we saw in the spinning rites. Aphrodite of Cyprus brought the maddening bird to men for the first time, and she taught the son of Aeson skill in prayerful incantations. This is actually an Iode they talk about.
Good
right?
sword.
So that he could rob Medea of reverence for her parents and longing for Greece would lash her mind on fire with the whip of persuasion.
You would never find a source like this other than Pindar. This is why Pindar is so good.
Just so magical and so freaking wild, and it points it out to you, right? He is doing those songs to totally dominate her. And he was taught the song by Circe on the urging of Juno.
Does anybody else see Aphrodite?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's causing the people to enter into a mania, right? And this is the avenue of control. You know why all Cretans are liars? Because
why does that come up, Ammon? I saw that. I think I saved it. I'm not sure. It may be in the presentation. Why do they call
Paul is citing Medea.
Yeah.
Tell him why.
Yeah. He's citing Euripides, I think, who's citing Medea.
Who cites
and
Medea?
It's because she was judged not to be the most beautiful and by the Cretans, it was by one Cretan. And so she said at the time, right? So trying to think of this historically, she said at the time, all Cretans are liars, right? And from that situation in history, that echoed down through time, through poets and through Paul the Apostle. And it was because everybody knew all Cretans are friggin' liars. Yeah, love it. Oh God, it's so sexy. Look how they bring it. I'm gonna do that in Draconius too, but I'm gonna stop.
So I don't want to get too deep into the source here, but basically what the source is telling us here is that the golden fleece is actually the skin of a man who had shown up on Colchis with the ship with the ram's head, Phrixus, who was to be married to Circe, but that doesn't happen. Instead, he gets flayed, and the song gets emblazoned on his back. Ammon, what are your thoughts on this from Diodorus? Is the golden fleece the flayed skin of a hero who failed to marry Circe?
Yeah, you know what? It's at this point that you have to look to the oracle of the Vatican, of the god Vaticanus, and she comes out and she's like, "Listen, you dunderheads, I want you to look at it for the metaphor that is there, because you can't understand the mechanics." And that's what's going on with the fleece. That's why there's so much distortion. And people are like, what is this thing? What is this thing? What is this thing? I was just reading one of the historians. I think it was John Malalas or somebody. I can't remember. But he said it wasn't actually the skin of a ram. He said it was, because that's generally what they, as you know, what they say that it was. He said it was just books, right? And another source will say it was books with the song written on it, right? So I think what you have to do when you look at dragons, those are people. When you look at rams and their sisters and, oh God, the Hellespont and all that kind of stuff like that, you're still talking about people. You're talking about people, and that's not escaping them, right? And I think if we understood that, we'd understand things like, why is Medea called the granddaughter of the sun? Why?
Wow, interesting. But I wanted to read this part because I found it. It said, the body had been flayed. The skin was nailed up on the temple in keeping with a certain custom. And when later an oracle was delivered to Aeetes to the effect that he was to die whenever strangers would sail to his land and carry off the skins of Creus, the king, they say, built a wall about the precinct and stationed a guard over it. Furthermore, he gilded the skin in order that by reason of its brilliant appearance, the soldiers should consider it worthy of the most careful guarding. But it was that skin of a man.
Does it surprise you, Snappy, that the dude who is quoting Medea and saying that all Cretans are liars, does it surprise you that he's covered with tattoos and that his skin is used as a book when he's dead? These are people who are advising major power figures. So I want this is good. This is gorgeous.
When I was in Caesarea Philippi, there was some sort of like stone inscription that apparently Paul was like at that location or something. I can't remember exactly what was going on there, but there was some inscription that was like Paul was here, basically. Somebody was writing that down. And right, I'm not kidding, right in that same area, when you walk down the street a little bit, there's a theater, and then there's a bunch of Medusa heads there. So Paul's in this city writing these letters, to whoever the hell he's writing to, and he's in this city with a theater and a bunch of Medusa heads everywhere, saying the phrase, all Cretans are liars. He's in that world.
And he's immune to venom. Very important.
So one of these interesting sources that I found was this pseudo-Plutarch, Names of Rivers and Mountains. And what was interesting about this is that he talks about Prometheus being on the same mountain that Dionysus was born in, and that from this mountain is where the plant grows that's called Prometheus, from his blood, that is the main plant. And in this one, they're saying it's coming from the Himalayan region, that this mountain is in India. So then this makes me think of the Soma and all of those crazy Aryan stuff, right? Is Medea using the Soma?
Come on, Snappy. Come on, don't play hard to get. From the beginning, you had Dion put up here a figure of a woman, and she has a swastika on her.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it. With the connection you're making. And I think it's, definitely there. Yeah, love it.
Right. But yeah, just so much wild stuff here. That's pretty much all I wanted to show you guys. Also, the cauldron magic and the boiling people alive. I wanted to talk a bit about this just because it seems that this Medea can, through this boiling with the water, as Neal talked about, grant you immortality, or she can turn you into a stew. Because she does rip apart a ram and bring them back to life. And in some sources, it say that that's not a ram. Like Ammon pointed, it's an actual person. She rips apart one of her virgins and then puts them back together to prove to the daughters of Creon. right?
Right, because she's going to do it on Creon, right? It's a process of her very strange transfusion as well. Actually describe cutting open blood vessels and transfusing, right? Oh my God, is this sexy or what? This is late Bronze Age, people.
Yeah, totally freaking wild, right? What else did I have here that was interesting? Before you can take over there, Ammon.
Let's let Neal. Do you want me to go first? I'm going to do Dracontius. Or do
You go. I don't even have much. I'll just comment on what you have. Go ahead.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, we'll just hop in. We'll hop into Dracontius here. Let's just go ahead.
You have good comments, Neal, by the way. Did everybody notice how on target and everything with the sources? I'm getting scared now of Neal. I'm like, oh man, he's going to shove one of these sources up my backside.
You have grad student brain, Neal. I just want to say, everyone, go watch. Neal did a great video where he discusses the sources around the Danny Jones interview with Dan McClellan, and he did a follow-up interview discussing it with Myth Vision podcast. Both should be watched. It's grad level, university level stuff. And if you are interested in any of the pagan stuff we're talking about, it's a schooling. You'll learn all the truth about Dionysus and its connections to Jesus without any propaganda from the source.
Straight from the source. That's what I deal with. Sources. That's it. And don't get me wrong, I read scholars, but I read the scholars that deal with sources. I'm very particular on, like, you can tell which ones do and which ones don't. Just saying. It might sound cocky, but I mean, some people out there might know what I'm saying by that.
Well, it's also one of these things, if you put yourself out there as a expert with a PhD from that background, you got to expect people to check your sources, and you got to expect people to challenge your thesis. And you did what anyone would have done if it was presented in an academic journal, and it was brilliant to see. And yeah, you brought the goods. You set the record straight. Beautiful.
Appreciate that.
Neal is going to join me for the second half of Lady Babylon tonight, where I am going to run a couple of clips and tell you what the devil told me. And we're going to have Neal there shortly.
Same setup, just
like
this.
It's a whole new for Lady Babylon, a whole new format. But I thought this was a great opportunity. And so I'm going to play a little bit of it myself and talk about it. Yeah. Do you want me to start on my end, Snappy?
Go ahead, Ammon. Take it away. Dracontius.
Okay. I won't make it hugely long. I just want people to see that we're Christing our friggin' eyes. We're Christing our friggin' eyes. Can everybody see this? Epi Christa ophthalmon. This is from Edius of Amida. Nobody reads Edius of Amida. Neal, have you ever heard of Edius of Amida?
Nope.
No. Excellent. And I can keep doing that all Harvard night, right? And this is part of a problem of classics, right? And Neal will get there. He'll get there to these sources, and he'll pull them up, and he'll be like, shit, Ammon wasn't lying. Right? I just want you to see we are Christing in the eyes. And when you Christ in the eyes, it's for sexiness. Right? It's for sexiness. If we are within the mystery. Go. Give me the next one. Sorry, Snappy. I just wanted to bring to you Dracontius tonight. Dracontius. And by the way, who is the one that we first have Christing? We first have Christing Medea. There is no older reference. There is no reference that gives somebody that was before her who was Christing. And what is she Christing for? She is Christing to change your mental state, and she is doing it to many people at once. So you talk about, Snappy talked about how the family was that she grew up in, and that she had this bent to be more healing. Her bent led her into cities or villages, they described them, where she would fumigate the people. And what do you mean? She would expose them to drugs in order to force them into a mind-altering experience. Yeah, isn't that unethical? No. When those mind-altering experiences are healing and purgative, when they cause your population to stop following tyrants and to start following the muse, that Bacchic power is chemical. If you sever that link, you sever the actuality of the communion. Anyway, here's Dracontius, and Dracontius, Mr. Dragon is his name. He's writing about Medea and this little exercise that he gives us. And, he says, look, he's got a lot of trepidation about talking about this virgin who makes gods captive, who works the elements. What's wrong? Nature has to bend to her. That's the crux of Medea, is that she forces nature to do what it doesn't want to do, what it doesn't do naturally. When you burn off somebody's mortality for the sake of their health, you'll know that you're going to be taking aggressive steps. Yes, these may kill this person and these babies. They're killing these babies, right? Medea she's offering them in the temple. What is this all for? Look at that third line. Servire puellae, all so that nature and God is bound to serve a girl. Puellae. How is she described? We run into this. This is a brick wall we always run into. Here is this entity called Medea, whose very name is medicine. Her power is extensive. And when she is called upon to take power, she's just a kid. She's just a kid. And somehow, as just a kid, she knows more than everyone. Right? This is an organic girl who has created a system of catapulting people into the nether to see what is beyond, to open their eyes, to be as gods. This is Lady Babylon. That's why they said it's she of the many names. And it's all through these drugs. Give me the next one, Snappy. We'll keep going. I'll go quick here. Right? So, God, why? Because Medea orders that which is nephos. There's two things in the world. There's phos and nephos in the Latin, right? Now, this is funny, by the way. I'll share this later, but this is funny because somebody came out with a refutation video, and the title of it was something ridiculous like, this is why you need to know more than one ancient language, trying to refer, because the moron didn't know that classicists also know Latin. We have to know classical Latin, right? So anyway, Medea is ordering that which is nephos. And what is that, right? So try to get down to the actual dirt of what that means. It's that which is unacceptable due to impurity. Right? This is an option we don't have. What is nephos? That's why we don't conduct any business on days that are nephos. Okay? You stop. You stop. Why? Because of Sabbath. Do you hear this? How many years is this before the thing that you're hearing when you're hearing Sabbath? This is centuries. This is 1,000 years previous. 1,000 years previous. Do you see? I thought the Sabbath was made up. It's a thing that comes out of Hebrew. No, that's why you don't know. Fantastic. Let's go to the next source. Give me the next one. Watch what happens. I just want you to see. We're involving the Temple of Diana, right? And what is this girl? This bottom line just shocks me. Just shocks and awes me. What is this girl, Medea? She's the one who possesses the star shining heaven within her breast that is funereal, within a funereal breast. Now we all know that Medea was described as being metachronic in the Greek, right? She is somehow able, her mind, with respect to her mind, she's somehow able to project her mind beyond, that poets recognize. And it's from that projection that she's able to do what she's able to do. Notice, I just want you to see, she is serving in that temple of Diana, where when strangers wash up, we sacrifice them. We don't just throw them away. Come here, lady. Come here, dude. Right, sailor dude, some poor guy. Right, he's out here. Come on. We blow powder up his nose. We stick things into his rectum. Right? And we watch, we study. And why are we doing this, people? Don't you understand? Don't you understand the satanic connection that Lucifera brings? Right? Lick my armpits, right? Says the devil. Lick my armpits. Why? That stuff that was on Jesus's face and the devil's armpit, that makes Eve horny. Isn't that amazing? And what happens? Why would we want to do that? Because that's where we get Eve to sing. Haven't you ever heard Eve sing? Where is that bird? Where's that bird in that wheel? Where's that bird in that wheel? Anybody looking for that? Where is it, ladies? Right? Give me the next one. Give me the next one. This is what they call Medea. This is what Dracontius calls Medea. Skoutha. And this verb in Greek means to be high, to do the Scythian thing. Why is that? Because Medea is bathing in the fumes of the bud of cannabis. She is constantly in a realm that is pure. Okay. For those of you who do the brain chemistry and all that kind of stuff, and what are these receptors for and all that, right? Here you've got people who are already plugged into it, right, without knowing what that chemistry is. No, next one, Snappy. Let's get through these because I don't want to take up a whole ton of time. You can't read Dracontius without running into the beautiful. Oh God, this is Aphrodite, people, right? She's that Newman of the Amontum, right? She's that Genetrix, that producer. Oh God. What is Dracontius doing? He is joining the Genetrix, Venus Genetrix, to Medea, right? It was Venus Genetrix through whom all of this was made possible. All of this. Okay, good, fantastic. Let's go to the next one. Right, love it. Why do you think the Romans worship her like they do? Right, and what follows around? What are the little odors that follow around the child of this Venus, the Genetrix, the producer? It's the odor. It's a vernal odor. It's a vernal odor. Isn't that nice? And it's called, wait a minute, do you smell the vernal odor? Now, what am I saying when I mean vernal? You know what I'm talking about. Smells that you associate with spring. Smells that you associate with life coming to fruition, right? With life producing life. That's what that vernal power is. And she's got it here. And what do we call this? We call this via pulchra rosarum. People have been asking me, you mentioned once the way of the rose. Why do you think there is a way of the rose? It's because Aphrodite has such a beautiful smelling girdle. And if you get right up there and you breathe that in, that vapor will turn you into a poet, right? There's got to be that connection. And of course, Medea was the most attractive, right? She was the most beautiful. It's why Cretans are liars. Now imagine that, a woman who's this advanced, with all of her, she's archery and she's all the horse stuff and she's herbal stuff and she knows all the poisons. She's doing all this. She's drugging entire villages, getting them to dance and enter the Bacchic mania so they can purge and they can be better people, right? Imagine she knows, yeah, I am the most beautiful, right? Isn't that gorgeous? Oh, God, ladies, put it down. Put it down. Contest is over. Contest is over. Let's get one more. I think I've got one more. Hit the next one. Oh, God, this is lascivious Venus, right? And Cupid. What does Cupid do? He lays in the lap of mommy. I just want you to think about that image for a second, okay? Give me the next one. What do you do, by the way, when you lay in the lap of Venus? As it just said, you inhale the vapors. Remember, Medea invents, the Greeks said, incubation. Okay. And what is she doing? She's doing things like compelling the sky, right? But I want you to look at the end of the first line on this one. Medea sacerdos. She is referred to as a priestess, right? Okay, fantastic. Give me the next one, because you can't ever lose that. You can't ever lose that connection. What does this people say? Now, I'm giving you this totally out of context of Dracontius, but I don't care. Because what this openly says is what? The Magus is a pirate? Is that a... Oh, God. Have we come back? Have we come full circle? Do you remember what happened to Medea? She got abducted, man. She got abducted. I don't care what you say. The dudes came in a boat and took her away. I don't care if you say, well, she was saving their lives. She was overcome with love and the oysteress. I don't care what you say.
She was drugged.
Yeah. She was abducted in the end, right? Just like Jesus with the naked kid. In the end, when you raise your hand to those cops that raid you, and you have, your little naked kid there with you, and you raise your hands and you say, I am not a child trafficker, right? It's something in antiquity that's deep vein in their history. And here it is again, associated with the Magus. Why is it? Because they're associated with the drugs and the using of the drugs. By the way, I found a eunuch reference that talks about a eunuch that was sex starved. This eunuch was he would do awful things because he had such a high sex drive. And you say, wait a minute, eunuchs don't have high sex drives. You make a eunuch and you got somebody without that testosterone. Guess what? You can chemically induce it. Oh, do you see why we need the eunuchs? You gave a picture tonight in that dress. Snappy, could you put that up? Because I just want to check that guy that Dion brought in. Dion, it was the one with the dress. No, it's Medea where she's got the dress. Yeah, let's go back, right? Was it all the way at the beginning? It may have been all the way at the beginning. There she is, people. Look at that guy. My first question is, what is he doing there naked? Number one, was it just an occasion where he decided to be naked? What's going on? Is there something going on with the fact that she's wearing the very same outfit that the girls who are graduated to the next level of education in Argos that they're wearing? Is there some reason for that kind of thing going on? And who's that? Is that a eunuch of some sort? Where are the eunuchs? Okay, give me my next one. Still the symbol, right? And all the Nazis get all excited and everything, but they always miss the boat. You people always miss the boat. Prometheus was being drilled by Medea, right? He's not the hero. He's some dude that she captured, right? And what does it say? She does what? She eats his liver out. Now, if you can tell me anthropologically what it means to eat a dude's liver out. I'll tell you, I have seen women poop out humans in antiquity, and it is not a pretty sight. Let's go to this here soon. Colchis. Look, I just wanted to point out on the first line, Colchis is the name of Medea. And what is she doing here? She's splashing herself with water, right? And she's putting the stuff on a laurel wreath, excuse me, or it's not a wreath, but a laurel branch. And what is she doing? It fumans. She's gasifying it. She's gasifying it. Why? So she may purge her members. So she seeks out a secret place where there are lots and lots of graves. And she sets herself up there and she looks at the ground and she confesses her wrongdoing. And she raises her hands to the moon and she prays, Prince of the stars, bright shining grace of the signs, honor of the stars of heaven. Now, wait a minute. You're saying, what's all the astrology stuff, dude? Right? What are they doing for us? It's all a part. It's all woven into the science. And it's something that plagued me when I was a graduate student working with ancient medicine, is you cannot, your scientific instinct to kind of tease that out of the pharmacology, it doesn't help. It's all interwoven. So that when you mention constellations, you're actually talking about plants. Did you know that? Oh my God, where do I get a book that breaks everything down for me? You have to have incantations when you go out for these plant collections, right? Under Hekate, under the priesthood of Hekate. Anyway, look, here's the threefold. Look at it, Dion. There it is at the bottom, second to last. She's the triplex regina, right? Triplex regina. She's that triple queen of those what? Of the nocturnorum polorum, right? Of the nocturnal things of the poles. And what is she at the very bottom? Look at this. She is patrona. Isn't that nice? She is patrona of my what? Of my darkness, of the shadows, of my dreams. That is who she is. Remember, she is meta, right? She is meta. Every time we were talking about that last time. Metachronic. That's the Greek word for what she does with her mind. Okay, give me the next one. Let's see. That's why. Do you realize why people get scared? Right? We've got, oh God, we've got rich person, poor person, the one who's incapable. We've got the one who is the predator, and we've got the pirata. Wait, what? We've got pirates again, and we've got sacerdos. And guess what? They're all on the same level. Your priests and your pirates, Hail Mitra, are the same. Are the same. Wait a minute. Oh God, are we getting into Medea's religion? Yeah. The one before this was about snake snappy, or the one that you flipped to before this. We can go to that one. We go to that one. Oh yeah, look what happens with all the snakes. They vibrant. They vibrate. What do they create? Sibylla. They create Sibylla. These whispers, these hisses that are the characteristics of Medea's prophetic incantations. Okay.
And that's the snake tongue, and it takes us back to the Sibyl,
Yes.
right? The Sibylline oracles.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And people will say, "Oh, it's Cybele from the Council of the Etruscan goddess," right? Or it's the vocal expression that the prophetesses actually make. So yeah, always stick with the one that's that you can look at the language and say, "Oh, well, look, the language says this is actually a form of poetry," right? Okay, it's a sibilation. Oh God, that stuff makes me okay. Give me the last one. I'm almost done. I'm taking up too much time. Boom.
Oh, there was one more? Okay, let me see.
Was there one more, or was that it?
I think that was it. That
was it. Okay, the vipers. Yeah, the vipers. That's it. Okay, let's go. That was it. I just wanted people to see some of the unusual sources that have to do with Medea. And tonight's one was Dracontius. Run out and get him and read him.
I spent like hours trying to find him in English. He's not in English. I downloaded him in Latin, in German, in Portuguese. I did find plenty of people talking about. So he's a very important source for this stuff because his epic, the Carmina, it really does use a lot of that Orphic vox, and several scholars were connecting it to that Orphic tradition. So Dracontius was on to something, and he's one of the sources a lot of scholars pointed out that really highlights the human sacrifice and Medea's participation in it. Where in a lot of them, they say that she rebels and doesn't engage, but Dracontius says no, she was a part of it. She wasn't wholly against it, just didn't like what they were using it towards. All right, so that was wild. So Neal, you got something for us, eh?
Yeah, I know. I mentioned that source about Diogenes. You can find it in this book right here called "The Sayings of Diogenes the Cynic," where it's a Oxford text. It's pretty cheap. It's got all the fragments about Diogenes in there, and one of them that's in there is about him explaining to somebody that Medea was the inventor of baptisms. That she invented this baptismal rite, and her magic water rites would heal men's bodies and give them immortality and make them younger. This is a cynic saying this. This is a guy who normally he was known for going around and saying, "Hey, are you initiated in the mysteries?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." And he's so, why do you deserve to go to Elysium over the person who saved our city from the invaders? What makes you greater than them? Like, he would talk crap. Anyways, that's another story. But just for him to say that about Medea is wild. But this is a source that I got because Ammon mentioned that Medea is Lady Babylon. Now, somebody might say to that, I need a source for that. Well, we got one. So this is from Philostratus during the Severan period. He writes, I found the following to be an account of the sage's stay in Babylon. He's talking about Apollonius of Tyana from the 1st century. He's writing about this guy Apollonius. He says, and all we need to know about Babylon. So then he's going off on a tangent about Babylon now. He was writing about Apollonius, but now he's going to go off on a tangent about Babylon. Just to tell you the context of what you're reading right here. The fortifications of Babylon extend 480 stadia and form a complete circle and wall, 3.5 plethrons high, but less than a plethron in breadth. And it is cut asunder by the river Euphrates into halves of similar shape. And there passes underneath the river an extraordinary bridge, which joins together by an unseen passage the palaces on either bank. For it is said that a woman, Medea, was formerly queen of those parts, who spanned the river underneath in a manner in which no river has ever been bridged before. Remember that before I explain this technology that she introduces to them, the Medes, according to Herodotus in 450 BC, so 600 years before this is even written, we have accounts from historians saying that the Medes named themselves after Medea. So the rulers of, the people ruling Babylon, the Medes and the Persians and those people, they're calling themselves Medes after Medea, according to this. So now here's what she does when she's ruling Babylon. She gets stones together and copper and pitch and all that the men have discovered for use in masonry underwater. So she's doing underwater cement stonemasonry, just like you find today people doing like building, all types of underwater masonry. She's doing this in the ancient times. And she piled these up along the banks of the river. And she diverted the stream into lakes. And as soon as the river was dry, she dug down the fathoms and made a hollow tunnel, which she caused to debouch into the palaces on either bank like a subterranean grotto. She built a subterranean grotto in Babylon. This is brilliant. And she roofed it on a level with the bed of the stream.
It
The
sounds like the
foundation.
Gardens of Doesn't it sound like the Gardens of Babylon that they talk
It's
about, the seven
wild.
wonders? Yeah.
It's amazing. Check this out. This is where it gets crazy too. The foundations were thus made stable, and also the walls of the tunnel. But the pitch required water in order to set hard on stone. The Euphrates was then let in on again on the roof while still soft, so that the junction stood solid, and the palaces are roofed with bronze, and a glitter goes off from them. But the chambers of the women and of the men and the porticos are adorned partly with silver, and partly with golden tapestries or curtains, and partly with solid gold in the form of pictures. But the subjects embroidered on the stuffs are taken from the form to form Hellenic story. So they depict all these ancient myths on the walls. Andromedas being represented, and Amymone, and as you see, Perseus frequently. And they delight in Orpheus, perhaps out of regard for his peaked cap and breeches. For it cannot be for his music or the songs which he charmed and soothed others. And woven into the pattern, you perceive Datis tearing up Naxos out of the sea, and Artaphernus beleaguering Arteria, and such battles of Xerxes as he has won. So it says these figures the Magi themselves say they arrange, for they have access to the palace, and they call them so you see how there's like this tradition that Medea was the queen of Babylon. It says it right here. Medea was formerly queen of these parts, and she built this underwater palace out of the Euphrates River and diverted the water into that area. It's amazing. So she's inventing technologies. I got one more thing that I want to show, and then we can talk and just discuss our sources. This is the last. This is really cool. This has to do with Alexander the Great. Let's see. Here it is. So this is from Plutarch. I'm sorry, Plutarch, Life of Alexander. And when Pausanias, who had been outrageously dealt with the instance of Attalus and Cleopatra, and could know justice at Philip's hands, slew Philip, most of the blame developed upon Olympius. Remember, this is right before Alexander became king. This is when Philip is king. Philip is assassinated by this Pausanias character, and everyone's Olympius. They're about to go into Babylon. They're about to go into Babylon and conquer. Now think about this. Babylon, Lady Babylon, Medea, right? On the ground that she had added her exhortations to the young man's anger and incited him to the deed. But a certain amount of accusation attached itself to Alexander also. For it is said that when Pausanias, after the outrage that he had suffered, met Alexander and bewailed his fate, Alexander recited to him the iambic verse of Medea, the giver of the bride, the bridegroom, and the bride. What? How many people know about that? That there's an actual tradition that Alexander set up Philip because he's actually the father of. He actually thinks he's the son of Ammon, not Philip, and that and then as a sort of justification for what he did, he cites Medea, the giver of the bride, the bridegroom, and the bride. That is dark right there. Tell me that's not dark.
That's dark, yeah. But it's wild, right? It's wild. It's that power magic. It's that power play, right? We see this constantly with Medea. One thing I was thinking about when we were going through this, we were talking about the virgins who are associated with Artemis or Hekate and become these magicians. There's one that we left out. Ariadne and Dionysus, and this also parallels the Medea story. And there's even some talk that there's a connection there. What do you think about Ariadne and the Medea connection, Ammon or Neal or Dion?
Well, it's very important. First of all, Ariadne and Bacchus are the most depicted all faces and paintings and art. You're mostly going to find Ariadne and Bacchus. So that needs to be right off the bat said. They are the most influential characters in all of Greek sources, by far. And Ariadne is sometimes considered to be an Aphrodite. And there's all these different traditions about Ariadne and Theseus when defeating the bull, but then Dionysus defeating Theseus because Dionysus is the bull. She goes back and forth between both sides.
And I wanted to point out this part too, because she gets abandoned on that island, right, by Theseus. And it's on the, in some of the stories, right, Dionysus comes and saves her. But in the earliest versions, she's like Asteria. Through her own purity, she ascends to the heavens. She just gets the fuck out of Dodge by her own magic and goes to be with Dionysus. Sometimes he comes and saves her, but other times, no, she just goes of her own means. Like a true Virgo, right?
She's very much that abandoned oracle. And maybe this is why you have some of the animosity. Because on one side, you've got women who are executing men of power. And on the other side, you have men who are abandoning women and or abducting them. So it's a very strange Bronze Age power dynamic. But I think it says a lot about humanity. And I don't know. I find a certain appeal in the fact that Medea would not only be so smart, but would be able to inject that into the world direct. Like, how many of us, man, have you gone into your backyard and found some crazy plants that are drug causers, and then that are effectively will do things to your mind, and then you integrate with those a rite that involves a sexual act whereby your soul can be kicked through a black hole. I mean, who does this? Who does this kind of stuff?
Not just that, but also builds a freaking whole underground aquatic bridge system and garden system. Another thing I saw with her was that she inspired the Aryans and taught them the horsemanship and the art of wearing pants. She invents pants. Like, she gets equated with so many things. She is that heroine, but it's interesting to think about, right? What do you think, Neal?
I mean, that tradition from Philostratus is something, because she's called the Queen of Babylon, and then they have this idea that she's like doing all this crazy technological advancements and diverting streams of water into different, making underwater pitches and shit, and drawing heavens, and Orpheus playing his lyre on the, like, that's what they thought about her, and that was written in around 100 AD. That's the Romans in this shit. So she still has this huge piece in history, even all the way up into 200 AD.
That's such a good point. So,
that's a long time for her to hold that position.
Dion, what do you think about all of this virgin kind of archetype, since you have more of that grandiose depiction? What we've been talking about Medea, what do you think is going on?
Well, part of it's been coming up a lot, is the fertility goddess connected to the war goddess. Childbirth, like in Artemis, she's the goddess of childbirth, but then she's virginal, a virginal goddess of childbirth. That's been coming up. And a lot of these powerful goddesses, it's an archetype.
This makes me think of one of the places where we see this kind of do this antagonism between different religions put on full display, I think, is Salome by Oscar Wilde. Okay. On one hand, you have Salome, who is that Lady Babylon, goddess of love and war, who wants sex, who wants to connect. And then you have Joachim, who is like this Artemis moon, who's like, no, I refuse to engage. And then the refusal just causes the violence until the head gets taken, right? It's like you can either sleep with Lady Babylon or she takes your head.
Right.
So I got a question. what's the show about later? This magical secret show coming up.
Oh, I've got a couple of clips that I took from Myth Vision show, and I want to look at them, and I want to give you the report that the devil gave to me. That's what I'm doing. And Neal's going to join me when I'm done. And it's going to be a different format. I'm not going to flash up to you sources and whatnot. I'm just going to talk you through it. And I want people to see the power of freedom and the power of reason. And that's the central devilish theme. And there's a lot of darkness in it too. So I'm free, Dion. I'm free. What do you call it when you, I don't know, when you grab your guitar and you just go at it, you know what I mean? Instead of saying, what song are we going to play?
Improvise.
Improvise. There we go. I'm going to improvise a lot tonight, but there's a lot of things that I've got up here that I need to tell you where we've been, where we are, and where we can go. And of course it makes people uncomfortable, so it's got to be great. I'm going to love it. So, and then Neal will join me, and I will mercilessly, I will ask him questions. I will not go
Sounds
easy.
good.
Yeah. Fantastic.
We'll make sure everybody out there like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. You got Gnostic Informant channel. You got Lady Babylon channel. Drawing Down the Stars. We appreciate all your time and energy. I've had a lot of fun today.
Yeah, this was so much of a blast. Before we finally wrap things up, though, I want to ask one final question, because there's the last thing that we see with Medea is she does kill her kids, but then there's this talk about her also, you know, there's all of this connection with these queens and giving birth to the child to come, and the rites having to do with this birth magic. Do you see, Ammon, any connection between her and what we see in the Eleusinian rites and the uniting of the Chthonic and the Olympian and this birth of that divine child to come, this Dionysus reborn? Do you see any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, and that's why she is sprinkling the cocaine when she in the eyes when she Christs. She's doing the very same thing. She's bringing up that Eleusinian queen of the underworld so that you can take that image and you can base your life's map around it. It's like a reprogramming, and the eidolon in the idolatry is that image that they're transferring, and it comes out again and again as that mystery korwa, as the Mycenaeans originally called it, korwa. Right. So, and remember, Medea is living in a time when her culture, right, which is what? Is she Libyan? Is she Egyptian? They got there with the Egyptians. It's hard to tell. Is she Corinthian? Because apparently she's got connections there, right? What's going on? Again, time of migrations. So somehow in the time of her existence, she's able to amass this knowledge of how to conduct these psychic medicinal practices and able to get you to the place. I mean, imagine this. Was she sitting down one day and was like, oh, well, this one can kill you, but this one will put you into a state that almost looks like you're dead. So if we readjust this and we add something else to it, right? And the first person she brings back, imagine that. Imagine that. So I think it's I'll end my part by saying the genius of Medea, the scientific learning, the genius of a culture that is largely mobile, right? Of a culture that comes right out of the earth. The fact that they were able to get to the points that they were able to get that are so much higher and sophisticated pharmacologically than us. We are the morons who banned it all. We're the morons who banned it all and took our growth curve and just slapped the hell out of it. And right. And so now we want a renaissance to get back on track and to get out there. But the medical stuff is all showing this. It's showing they're putting people into altered states and they're doing it with drugs, and they're doing it for the sake of health. And anyway, I'm sorry, I'm beating an old drum, but I get excited. Snappy and Dion, thank you for letting me participate tonight in the discussion of Medea. I wanted to bring more to you too about the horse side of it and the horse interaction, because I think that's having more to do with it. And I wanted to bring you the horny eunuch, because most people don't think of eunuchs as being horny, but you can make them that way. You can make them that way. Praise Jesus, the Christ. You can make them that way.
Well,
for the
this is
kingdom
so.
of heaven.
You in some of these Byzantine texts that I was reading, they talk about they're the full eunuchs, and then there are the partial eunuchs where they take the testes, but they leave the genitalia intact so that they can be sex slave. And they talk about these rich noble women using them, or rich, affluent businessmen. And as soon as they get to a certain age, they kick the eunuchs out. So then they talk about how you have all these disaffected eunuchs who were sex slaves who then come of age and become pirates or criminals. And it's like a huge problem in Byzantium.
Right, and that's what Alexander the false prophet essentially is, right? Because he is that sex slave when he's a kid, and he's entered into it by the guy who knows all the drugs, who happens to be a doctor. And when people look at that, they're like, wait a minute, is this guy a pimp or a doctor? Yes, is the answer to that. Right, he is both, and it's because of that crossover, that fine crossover between sexuality, drugs, and healing. And what do you need to do? I didn't know that my mind needed to get blown sexually in a rite so that I could go see the other side and bring back the image, the eidolon. I didn't know that was it's the mechanics of the universe. So, right, plug into the mystery. That's
you gotta face Pan. Sorry, you're gonna have to deal with that giant pre-ep. That giant erection is coming for you guys. Sorry. What do you got to say, Neal? Any final words?
Also, don't forget about when Diodorus before he gives that account about Aeetes and his daughters, Medea and Circe. He talks about this random Egyptian pharaoh, Sesostris, who apparently goes in the north. He's from Libya. He conquers Egypt. Then he goes into the north, takes over, defeats Babylon, defeats the Hittites, defeats all these Aryan kingdoms and all this. He basically, it says he had everything from India to the Mediterranean under his rule, and then he set up a kingdom in the Caucasus. And then it's right before he tells this story, very, very what's the word? Precisely before he starts talking about Medea's kingdom. So you're like, is this the family line? Possibly.
Neal, didn't you say the Romans gave Colchis some kind of special dispensation?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
This is a weird.
I remember seeing
it. Take a while, but I can do a quick little. So, the year 63 BC is a landmark year for many reasons. Number one, it's the year Julius Caesar is initiated and anointed as the high priest of Rome. He becomes the Pontifex Maximus. He wins the election. It's also the year Augustus is born. It's also the year, It's also the year that Augustus is born. Agrippa is also born 2 months before him. They're both born together, so they're like brothers. This all happens in 63 BCE. While this is happening, while Octavian and Agrippa are born, and while Caesar is the high priest in Rome, Pompey is over in the east fighting against Mithridates and defeats Mithridates. Mithridates dies about a month before Augustus is born. When Mithridates was born, there was a star in the sky, an 8-pointed star in the sky. That Venus symbol was in the sky, and they were like, Mithridates, the king of the world. Because he's descended from Alexander the Great, and he's descended from the Medes, which is Medea. He had both bloodlines going. So what happened is Caesar dies, and in his will, he writes that he adopts Octavian because he thought that Octavian was the chosen. Oh, I skipped a step. When Octavian was born in 63 BCE, the year that Mithridates died, another one of these comets was seen in the sky, the same one. It's almost like the priests were notified. Wrong guy, Mithridates, wrong guy. It's this guy, Octavian. So Octavian gets adopted as Julius Caesar, and that whole kingdom that Mithridates had over in the Pontus region, for some reason, and Cassius Dio says this in his writing. Cassius Dio says that Augustus gave special privileges that they were allowed to stay as a kingdom. They were allowed to keep their kings and queens while everyone else had to be governors. Only in Colchis. So so Augustus, we all know his story. He rules for 50 years, basically. He rules until he's like 90 years old. He's very old, 75 years old, something like that. And
he's still the whole time.
Towards the end of his life. Yeah, towards the end of his life, when Ovid got in trouble, was about to be executed, he was told that the only place you can go that you'll be safe is the kingdom of Colchis. And he has to flee there. So there's this special privilege. This is a special place. And everyone recognizes this. And for some reason, and there's a lot of sources that point to this little region of the Black Sea was always special to the ancients.
That's wild. That's so cool and so interesting. I just also want to point out that part of the reason, I was reading Christine de Pizan. I don't know how true this is because it's a much later source, but she claims that the reason why Ovid was kicked out is because he wouldn't stop abusing women and got himself syphilis. And then he hated women even more. And the Romans, who were notoriously patriarchal, are like, you're too much of a dick to women for even us. Get the F out. Yeah. Dion, any final words for our discussion here?
Well, thank you for watching. Watch next week. But next week is going to be the autumnal equinox. We're going to live stream. We're going to be playing drums. I'll be out at some park having a drum circle with people. Maybe you'll be
always seem to meet
all around everywhere.
We always seem to meet right when there's some sort of celestial event. It's always something.
Yeah, and then also later in a couple hours, I'm ready to see the hoo-ha that's about to kick off tonight, Sunday night.
Yeah. I got to transform. I told Neal, I said, I'm going to make you into a hero. So part of this is Neal's apotheosis is official. It's official. A son of Heracles.
I'm putting on that burning tunic.
Well, if I could say one thing, Neal, you look like you've been working out. You got a personal trainer? Woo! What's up, Mr. Olympics?
I just go in and hit it up a little bit. I've been doing it, yeah.
You can tell. You look good. Go to the beach. Have your fun.
Right? Living on the beach, living life large, new dog, new you, new look. Beautiful.
Hercules had a dog. So I gotta have a dog, dude.
Oh, totally.
I gotta take her to the beach.
He's gonna be totally tan too. Watch. He's gonna turn in. He's gonna metamorphose. Yeah, the old frescoes of Hercules, and everybody looks at him and like, why is he so dark brown? It's because he lives in Florida.
Love it.
All right, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and join us next week for our autumnal equinox celebration. It's going to be a lot of fun. And make sure you guys tune in an hour to Neal and Ammon when they do their live Lady Babylon special. All right, everyone. Peace and love. Hail Satan. Take care.
Hail Satan.